Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission meeting. The first issue is the call to order.
Roll call. Commissioners Harris.
Here.
Grooms.
Here.
Moulton. Here. Stoltz.
Here.
Banks.
Here.
Vice Chairman Derberry.
Here.
Chairman Sturdivant.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's see. Do we have an invocation today? Okay. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd ask everybody to please stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item is public business from the floor. This is the time for citizens who would like to address the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission on any agendized item. Please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you would like to discuss. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have any speakers?
I have a question. Mr. Thomas, did you want to speak now on MB2 or make this non-agendized?
It's not agendized.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm still talking about AB1.
Okay.
So, no, okay. The next item is the consent calendar. This is the approval of the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission meeting minutes of October 4th, 2011. Do any commissioners have any additions, deletions, or changes to those? If not, could I have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Good. Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Banks and a second by Commissioner Moulton. Please vote. The motion carries 7-0. Okay, new business. The first item on new business is the report from LACDC on the Housing Authority matters. Hello, Tracy.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Okay, did you get the email I sent to you earlier this afternoon containing the PowerPoint presentation?
I've been gone since this morning.
Okay. I did send that to you in an email.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You had inquired about any budget updates with regard to the program. We were just notified in late November that there will be an additional 5% cut for administrative fees in the Section 8 program. This is on top of the 20% that was implemented earlier this year. Right now, there does not appear to be any administrative relief for administering the program.
Tracy,
yes.
Before you go on, do you know what that'll place the per unit per month admin fee at?
I'm not sure if it has anything to do specifically with that. This is with regard to the operations and administration of the program.
Yeah, I know you earn a certain amount of funds per unit, and I was just curious if that might have been, that 5% cut had been translated into the dollar amount per unit.
No.
Okay.
This is operating costs with regard to staff, overhead, things of that nature, not specifically to the HAP.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two components to HUD funding for Section 8. There's the HAP funding, which is dollar for dollar, and then there's an administrative fee. And if I heard you right, I believe you said that the administrative fee was being cut 5%.
Correct.
Along with the additional 20% that occurred earlier.
Correct.
So my narrow question is, do you know what that admin fee is after those two cuts?
No, I do not. Emilio will be able to provide you with further updates at next month's meeting. There's conversations taking place this month as to how the agency can absorb those, well, figure out how we're going to operate with an additional 5%
Right.
cut.
I can imagine.
Yes. Were there any other questions with regard to the budget? No? Okay.
Tracy, I'm sorry. How does that, and maybe you haven't gotten that far, but it just affects the county staff that is administering the program. You're not getting a cut in the number of Section 8 recipients and those type of things that you're dealing with, right?
That's correct.
Okay. It's
Yes.
just going to be harder to manage because you're going to have less people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with regard to the rent study, I did, as I mentioned, for the PowerPoint presentation that Emilio presented to everyone in the October meeting. Based on the results that were found, there was only about a 3% discrepancy in what we were using with our company that we contracted with what the interns found, the interns who conducted the rent study. And as such, because there was, although a small disparity, it's enough for the agency to start looking for other companies to obtain our rent comparables from. And the RFP process will begin the first part of next year in order to procure the services of another agency.
Do you have an estimated completion date when that consulting firm would complete the study?
No, we have to procure the services first, and once the contract is in place, then they can narrow down the timelines and things of that nature, but Emilio will provide updates to that as well next month.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the status of the fraud investigations. The next Board of Supervisors meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December the 20th, and we will find out at that time the status of the moratorium, whether they'll continue with the moratorium or end it, and what their ultimate decision will be. Unfortunately, we don't know at this time what decision they will render. Currently, we have not seen an increase in the number of fraud complaints coming into the office or for the agency as a whole. But specifically for the AV area, there has been no increase in complaint calls. And for any complaints received, they are currently being handled by available staff and who are following up on any complaints received.
Okay. Okay, with that information, it sounds like my understanding is the report, the monthly report we were normally receiving was placed on hold. With the information you're giving us today, does that mean that next month we could expect a restart to the monthly report?
That will depend on the Board of Supervisors' decision on the 20th.
I see.
If they continue the moratorium or not.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, that's all I have.
Was there any, I'm sorry, on the study itself, the rent study, when we received the initial copy, I had a couple comments brought to my attention, and I'm hoping they've been brought to your attention. The average rent that was calculated there, unfortunately, wasn't a weighted average.
And unfortunately, and none of that was brought to my attention. I was not prepared to discuss in detail about the
Okay.
rent study, but Emilio did want me to let you know if you did have questions, that he would address them next month. But I can give him the questions you have so he can be prepared for next month.
Yeah, I'm basically providing this information so that your final report will contain that mathematical accuracy then.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions of the commission? Thank you very much, Tracy.
Welcome.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the discussion of the community impact from the California Public Safety Realignment Act. We have for us today from the Department of Corrections, parole agents Larry Dorsey and Jim Gopal. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, and we also have Mr. Joe Martinez, who's our district administrator for.
I'm sorry. That's true. Would you like to come up and speak to us about this?
us all up or one at a time?
I'm not sure how your presentations...
Why don't you guys just come on up, Rob? Good evening. My name's Joe Martinez. I'm with the California Department of Corrections Division of Adult Parole Operations, and I'm the parole administrator for the Antelope Valley area. And we're here to answer questions from CDCR's perspective regarding Assembly Bill 109.
Okay, I'll start. I guess the first question we would have would, do we know how many individual people will be brought here as a result of AB 109?
I can't tell you specifically the number of post-release community supervised parolees or persons that the County of Los Angeles will be receiving in the Antelope Valley area. I can tell you from our projections and statistics that over the course of the next year, Los Angeles County will get approximately 14,000 inmates who will be through Los Angeles County the first fiscal year, which runs from July 1 through of this year through June 30th of 2013. So approximately 14,000 for the first fiscal year and another 15,000 the following year. Probation isn't here, so I'm not sure exactly what their numbers look like. There was a report from the Los Angeles County Countywide Criminal Justice Coordination Committee, and just to give you some numbers that were provided by the county for the month of October. AB 109 took effect October 1st of this year, and there was approximately 1,036 post-release community supervised persons that were released to Los Angeles County. I was speaking with Lieutenant Downton just a few minutes ago, and he informed me that Lancaster and the Antelope Valley area received approximately 200 post-released persons for this area. That's an approximate number of parolees that we know of at this point. I don't know if you want to come up here and share any information regarding the numbers. Or...
Yeah, well, I'm glad it was you today. Actually, the exact number was 75 for Lancaster and 49 for Palmdale. And the way, what's that? That's just the last week. Well, that's to date. Right? No? The way I understood it, that was to date.
Just say plus or minus 40 or 50, right?
Yeah, well, the way I understood it was pretty close to being to date, but the way it breaks down is Region 1, Field Ops Region 1, which incorporates Temple, East LA, Lancaster, Palmdale, Santa Clarita, Altadena, and Crescenta Valley, along with some areas of Pasadena, have got 38% of the total releases, as compared to the other two regions, the way it's broke down. Like I said, I think those were pretty close to to-date numbers. I'll verify it for you in just a moment.
In regards to the number of parolees that we currently supervise, the state, the Department of Corrections, the Parole Division, we currently supervise in the Antelope Valley area, not just the city of Lancaster and Palmdale, but the entire Antelope Valley area. we supervised 1,871 parolees that are on active parole supervision in the Antelope Valley. Out of that 1,800 or so, 155 of them are sex offenders. I checked Megan's Law website yesterday, and there are approximately 790 sex offenders who are registered in 16 zip codes in the Antelope Valley area. 790 registered sex offenders in 16 zip codes in the Antelope Valley area. Out of those, 155 or 19% are on parole supervision. And you're probably aware already that sex offenders being supervised on parole supervision are subject to Assembly Bill 83, also known as Jessica's Law, that they have residency restrictions to parks and to schools, so they can't live within 2,000 feet of parks or schools, schools K through 12th grade. In addition to that, the Department of Correction places every sex offender on GPS supervision, so we know where they're at all times. We obviously don't know everything that they're doing, but at least we know where they're at all times. If they ever take that bracelet off, we're immediately notified, and we'll immediately issue a warrant for their arrest, contact local law enforcement, or send our fugitive apprehension teams to track them down and get them back into custody. Let's see what else. In terms of pre-paroles, what we call pre-paroles, these are inmates who will be released to parole supervision between now and May of next year. We're expecting approximately 106 parolees to be arriving in the Antelope Valley between now and May. Let's see. Any other questions regarding numbers of parolees here?
Just as a follow-up, how much of a change do these new arrivals, the parolees, represent, however you want to put it, statistically or by numbers, from what has been the norm in the past?
I'm not sure I follow. Could you repeat?
What was the pattern of the number of parolees in the Valley going back over the past year or two, or as far back as you know, and how will that pattern be changed by the introduction of the ones coming in under AB 109?
Okay. Well, let me see if I could answer your question. Basically, if you've read Assembly Bill 109, and depending on which documents you read and amendments, AB 109 is approximately 470 pages long with additional trailer bills, so you're talking about 700 and some pages. Essentially, for the 290s, and you've heard of the non-nons, the non-violent, the non-serious, and the non-sex offender, there's a misconception that no sex offenders will be supervised by the county, and that is not the case. Any sex offender that currently is in state prison, committed to state prison, sentenced to state prison for a non-violent, non-serious, and is classified as a non-high-risk sex offender will be released to county supervision. For example, you could have a sex offender or an inmate in state prison who was previously convicted of a sex crime, let's say a rape or a child molestation, but he is currently in state prison on a burglary, a petty theft, a drug offense. That offender will be released to county supervision and not to state parole supervision. So You hear that nonviolent, non-serious, and non-sex offenders will be supervised by the county. It's not entirely accurate. You're going to have sex offenders that are going to be supervised by the counties. And the other issue is, and I can't speak for probation and what protocols, what procedures, what policies, what laws they're going to be enforcing, but the California Department of Corrections is the only agency in the state of California that enforces Assembly Bill 83 and has every sex offender on GPS supervision. What the county is going to do with these sex offenders in particular, we are not sure. That's a question that you would have to ask county probation, whether they're going to enforce the residency restrictions in Jessica's Law or be placed on GPS. I really couldn't answer that question. That's a question for probation. So you're going to get violent offenders that, well, with priors, okay, who have prior convictions for violent and serious felonies, who currently are not in state prison on their current commitment offense for a violent or serious offense as defined by Penal Code sections 1192.7 and 667.5 CPC. Those people have prior convictions for violent and serious crimes. It's just not the current offense that they're in prison for. And as you know, the person that goes to state prison is not your first-time felon. He's not your first-time offender. These are usually persons who are chronic offenders. These are probation failures where the county has dealt with them, tried to put them in programs, provided rehabilitation, et cetera, and they drew the line and said, hey, you know what, this is the end of it. You're going to state prison. And the parolees or post-supervised persons, PSPs as they're called by the county, the same people that the Antelope Valley sends to state prison are the same people that are coming back to you. What else? In terms of the assistance that we provide for our sex offenders, I'll let Robin Holden, who is one of our clinical social workers, I could let her speak a little bit about those services.
Before you take a break from that, I'd like to ask if I heard this correctly. You're currently supervising 1,871 parolees in the Antelope Valley?
Yes.
And you're expecting another 106 in the next 6 months?
Yes.
So that's about a 5% increase in 6 months?
Roughly.
And would you expect another 5% in the following 6 months?
I couldn't tell you because we don't have those numbers, but I could tell you that the population that the Department of Corrections is going to be supervising on parole is decreasing as a result of Assembly Bill 109. And the persons that we typically would supervise are now going to the county. So we're not going to be supervising them. The county will, and they will be living in your cities and here in the county and across the state for that matter. But they will not be under the jurisdiction of the California Department of Corrections.
Can I interject something here too, Mr. Chairman? As a result of that county supervision, the maximum sentence they can serve for a violation is 180 days in the county jail. And especially now, based on the good time, work time implementation and the sheriff's early release policy, I don't even think we'll ever see anyone spend 180 days in jail. So, whereas if they've been under parole supervision, depending on how the case management was with parole, would be a determination on what time they would serve for that violation. There is a maximum set forth in this Senate Assembly bill that limits that to 180 days for incarceration in the county jail.
Yeah. Prior to Assembly Bill 109, when a parolee violated their conditions of parole, they could be returned back to state prison, not county jail, but back to state prison for up to 1 entire year. As a result of AB 109, that is no longer the case. the counties are now responsible for the entire revocation violation process. However, I believe it's by July of 2013 that the county will actually take over the revocation process, which will be handled by the district attorney's office, the public defender, and I believe administrative judges. And it's being done in 2 years to allow the county to put their processes in place to be able to do that. And now the most a parolee could be returned to county jail now, because nobody is going back to state prison on parole violations. The only people that will go back to state prison on a parole violation are your lifers. They will go back to state prison, but everyone else that gets paroled, whether we supervise them on state parole supervision or the county supervises them, they will do their revocation time in county jails. The other problem also is that here in Los Angeles County, the Sheriff's Department is under a federal court decree, and I believe that once the capacity reaches 92 or 93%, they have to start releasing offenders, and that's a decision that the sheriff obviously has to make. And some of the publications in the last few months, it was estimated or projected that by March of 2012, the county would be at capacity. And so now we're hearing that possibly this month the county will be at capacity, and so what you're potentially going to have is we arrest a parolee on some kind of a violation. We may not be able to book them into county jail because they're overcrowded. And what's going to happen is we're going to release them. We can't send them back to state prison. And what are these guys going to do? They're going to continue to commit more crimes and victimize more people, and it's going to be a recurring theme and a never-ending cycle.
Excuse me, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you've got a violent offender that's been sent to prison, now he's got the early release, and if he breaks his parole, the max time he can do in L.A. County Jail is 180 days. And in the event that this is after overcrowding, he won't even go to L.A. County.
That could happen.
So he'll be arrested and just released right then and there.
That could happen. And by the way, none of the inmates that are being released from state prison are being released early and sent to county jails. That's not happening. They're being released on their scheduled release date, whatever that may be for him or her. So they're not being released early from prison. The California Department of Corrections does have to release 33,000 inmates from our prisons by 2013, by July of 2013 or May of 2013. I'll let Robin talk about...
I don't think they're ready yet.
No? Okay.
I think they have to digest this information.
Yeah.
We're just trying to take in all the good news, so...
Well, you haven't heard half of it.
Well, I have another question before
Sure.
we leave this and go on to the next topic.
Okay.
You will, at parole, will be working with fewer people. I mean, fewer previous inmates.
Yes.
You're also going to be working with reduced staff? Is that
Yes.
my understanding also?
What will happen is that if Assembly Bill 109 is not modified to maybe include prior convictions for violent and serious felonies or some other modification made to it, 4 years out, when Assembly Bill 109 is fully implemented, the California Department of Corrections will only be supervising approximately 27 to 28,000 inmates, and obviously these will be your violent, your serious, and your high-risk sex offenders. So the population that we would normally have supervised will be supervised by the counties. What that means is that our staff are going to be laid off. In Los Angeles County, by September of next year, we're going to be laying off approximately 18 parole agents. These are field case-carrying parole agents who supervise offenders in our communities. The following year is going to be very significant. We're going to be laying off approximately 150 parole agents in Los Angeles County alone. In Los Angeles County, we supervise approximately 34,000 inmates. No one else in the state, and there are 58 counties across the state, no one has the population that we have here in Los Angeles County. We send approximately a third of inmates to state prison, and we get approximately a third of them back on parole supervision.
What does that do to your caseload?
We're working on reducing our ratios. Currently, we're funded at 70 parolees to 1 parole agent, but typically in Los Angeles County for many years we have been overwhelmed with way too many cases for agents to efficiently and effectively supervise them. And hopefully we will be going to a ratio of 53 parolees to 1 to allow us to do a more effective and more efficient job with that population, not only in supervising them, conducting compliance searches, but also providing rehabilitation services, referrals, programs, etc.
Thank you.
And I'll let Robin talk a little bit about the services that she provides, not only to our sex offenders, but to violent offenders as well, and to other people on parole supervision.
Yeah, I'm a clinical social worker, and the department that I work for is the Parole Outpatient Clinic. And every parole office has a parole outpatient clinic in it, so that we work directly with the parole agents on a daily basis. And what that does is every parolee who comes out and checks in is often seen by a clinician, and is determined whether or not that parolee requires treatment. Today, in my office, we have 500 parolees who see the Parole Outpatient Clinic. We have two full-time clinicians, 1 part-time clinician, and a full-time psychiatrist. And this is mirrored throughout all the parole offices. We see many parolees who have very serious mental illnesses, as you can imagine. Okay? We also see parolees because they need somebody to talk to. They don't necessarily have a mental illness, but they really need somebody to talk to, and so we don't turn them away. We see them. We also treat every sex offender, whether or not that sex offender is deemed to have a real mental illness, like schizophrenia. And as you know, I believe it's Chelsea's law, is now mandating that every sex offender receive sex offender treatment by a qualified clinician, a certified clinician, and that certification process is very difficult. The parole outpatient clinicians are becoming certified to do that. It's unknown how the county's going to handle it. The counties, as we know, county mental health is very overburdened already. The people that they see on a normal basis have typical what we call Axis 1 diagnoses, major mental illnesses, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, mental illnesses that require medication. That is their main population. For example, on the report that Mr. Martinez was reading from before, probation received 1,369 referrals from the released inmates, right? Of those, 272 were referred to the Department of Mental Health. I don't know what they used, what standards they used to refer them. Based on the pre-screening, 32 individuals were not in need of treatment. What does that mean, not in need of treatment? 53 individuals were in need of substance abuse treatment. And 187 individuals were in need of mental health or co-occurring mental health services. That's 69%. Then they said, and I can't find the exact page, that many of them did not show up for treatment. Many of them refused treatment. They just decided they didn't want to. In the department, in parole, they're not allowed to refuse treatment. If we say they need treatment, they got to go. And that could be a violation if they don't go to see their clinician. Every sex offender, like I said, is receiving sex offender treatment. This report didn't even mention sex offenders. We don't know where they're going. So, to me, as a resident of this community, it's pretty troubling that, they're not going to receive treatment if they don't want it. They may not have a qualified sex offender therapist out there who meets all the requirements under Chelsea's law, and they're not, I don't think that they're going to be on GPS monitors, and that only the very mentally ill will be receiving treatment with the county, not the county's fault. They're overburdened. And so, we've been kind of knocking around the idea of being able to have the county contract back with us for services, and that's one of those things that has to be in one of those rider bills. So, I'm just here trying to put that out there, that it's very troubling. We have, what did we look up? 10 sex offenders who are transient. And that's only the sex offenders. There's many more parolees out there who are listed as transient. And being transient, the fact that we have the sex offenders on GPS, we at least know where they are. So, anyway, this whole situation is troubling. Any questions? We're just giving you all the bad news at once. Merry Christmas.
Since nobody else is jumping up, I hate to monopolize the questions, but this thing was sold to the legislature because of its value at reducing recidivism. And where do you folks see that in the plan, as you understand it right now?
Probably for the last 4 years, maybe 5 years, the state of California has had a budget deficit. Approximately 3 years ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor. He also proposed that the Department of Corrections only supervise the violent, the serious, and the sex offenders. And we were going that way. And what happened was that, you may recall, a 17-year-old was kidnapped in downtown Los Angeles. She was robbed, she was kidnapped, and she was murdered by one of our parolees in the downtown area. A few months later, we had 4 Oakland police officers that were killed all in one day by one of our parolees who was on the run. And I believe that as a result of that, and a number of other high notoriety cases that occurred across the state, and political pressure that was brought to bear from the California Police Chiefs Association, from the California DA's Association, from the California Sheriff's Association, victim advocacy groups, and a number of other stakeholders, that the governor relented. And we went from being in the same position that we are now to growing and hiring. We were in the process of hiring 318 more parole agents, a proportionate number of supervisors, managers, support staff, etc. And 3 years later, it's the same budget problem. And then you have the issue of overcrowded prisons, and you have the U.S. Supreme Court basically with the sledgehammer telling the state of California that you will release 33,000 inmates by 2013. I believe that it's more a result of a budget problem than anything else. If we weren't having these budget problems, I don't think we would be talking about Assembly Bill 109 today.
Question, are you aware of how this Assembly Bill 109 is affecting other counties like LA County? In other words, we have the numbers you've given us. Is it that's the case scenario straight across the state, or are we in the higher end or lower end?
Well, Los Angeles County is the largest county in terms of population, in terms of the number of parolees that we, inmates that we sent to state prison, and the number of parolees that we receive. We also have the highest population. I think we have about 11 million people that live in Los Angeles County. Other counties don't have the social problems that Los Angeles County has, for example, and they have less parolees. If you read the papers, watch news reports, other counties are in better shape than Los Angeles County to take on Assembly Bill 109.
So we're not going to garner the support we need across the state. It's pretty much on us.
And some of the larger counties, probably San Bernardino, Riverside, San Diego are your biggest contributors to the state prison system. So I'm not sure, what's going to happen here down the road. But I think, personally, I think that criminal statistics will increase because there will be no accountability for these guys. We essentially have lost some of our teeth.
I think what troubles me the most is something you said earlier. You talked about some rider bills, and you mentioned a significant problem, and that is there'll be inmates released who are currently serving on maybe a minor offense, but their previous offenses have been violent. And you said did you say we needed a rider bill to correct that? Is that right?
There's a number of bills amending some of the provisions in Assembly Bill 109. And before I forget, let me just say that Assembly Bill 109 is an unfunded mandate. What does that mean? That means that we passed a law, or at least the legislature and the governor, our representatives passed Assembly Bill 109, but what it doesn't do is provide funding for the counties indefinitely. So what could happen at the end of these 2 fiscal years, because the state will provide funding for the next 2 fiscal years, but after that, and I'm sure if you've heard some of the reports, the governor has pledged to do everything that he can to place a constitutional amendment on the ballot next year. Prior to that Assembly Bill or that constitutional amendment getting on the ballot, it has to pass the legislature. And the votes to pass it may not be there. And so if it doesn't pass, money has to come from somewhere, or maybe money will come from nowhere, and there will be no money for the counties to supervise these post-release persons. So you will be left to supervise these parolees without any assistance, any financial assistance from the state.
I worked for the House of Representatives for 12 years. I'm real familiar with unfunded mandates.
Okay.
Can I add something?
We had
to that?
lots of them.
Sorry, Joe, but Commissioner Stoltz, it's similar to what we dealt with non-revocable parole. Initially, non-revocable parole had a criteria that dealt with their current offense that they were incarcerated in, and the determination was made for release at that point for non-revocable parole. But then it was amended, and certain persons that were first evaluated to be released under that program were not released based on their prior offenses. And it's a similar situation we have here that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with non-revocable parole, essentially, those persons that did not have a violent, a serious, a sex offense, and didn't meet other criteria were not placed on any form of parole or probation supervision. They were merely released upon their release date from state prison. The only thing they had was search and seizure. So law enforcement could search their residence, their person, at any time for any reason. That was the only good thing. And I believe we ended up placing about 20,000 or so non-revocable parolees on non-revocable parole. Effective October 1 of this year, there will be no more non-revocable parolees because they would all meet the Assembly Bill 109 criteria and would be going to the counties for supervision and not to state parole supervision. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I answered your other question. I got sidetracked there.
No, I think you pretty much answered. I guess what it says is we've got some flaws in this that are really glaring. And that one probably stands out to me more than anything, is that we've got people with priors, violent priors, that could be released not on that basis, but on a much minor past offense. And those are dangerous people that aren't going to be supervised properly, I don't think.
And some of the counties, for example, Fresno County at this point is not accepting any parolees who violated parole and who were booking only on a parole violation. So we could potentially have somebody who gets assaulted. They don't call the local PD or sheriff to file a complaint. They call us, and for whatever reason, we need to book that person. Well, in Fresno County, we would be turned away because there are no open charges to file, only technical violations of parole. And what do you do with those guys? I mean, you could see a scenario where you get a corporal injury, a spousal battery, and the guy threatens his wife or girlfriend. He goes to jail, or maybe he doesn't go to jail. We release him, and he goes back and he kills the girlfriend or the wife. Where's the liability?
Let's see. Wanted to make sure I understood one of your other points. You indicated that this was an unfunded mandate, and then a little later you talked about how the state of California will provide counties with the next 2 years' worth of increase in costs for counties. Did I hear that right?
Yes, my understanding is that the governor, the state of California, provided funding for Assembly Bill 109 for the next 2 years.
Okay.
After that, there's no guarantee that the counties are going to get any money to supervise these people and provide all the services that are required to assist them in our communities, to assist them to, get jobs, training, housing, treatment, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
In 2 years, there may be no money whatsoever.
Okay. But I want to make sure I understand the first 2 years. The first 2 years, there will be sufficient funding for the increase in county probation costs?
Well, I think county representatives told, a number of county representatives across the state told the governor that they could do the job that parole currently does much cheaper and more efficiently. And I think the counties are getting less money to do the job. We'll see what the recidivism rate will look like if somebody tracks it to compare it to the recidivism that we currently have.
But understand that funding was only provided for the LA County Department of Probation and the Sheriff's Department, who cooperatively are working this program in LA County. That doesn't provide any funding to cities where we pay for law enforcement services to deal with the fallout as it relates to these very issues. Mm-hmm. So no money is coming down to the city level to help the funding that we're going to need to deal with issues that arise out of this
And I'm also concerned with the social service costs associated with this early release.
Right. People will need services based on reentry into the community. That's also another resource drain as well.
Speaking of reentry, we are not the crime commission. We have a crime commission here in Lancaster, but we're not it. We're the Neighborhood Vitalization Commission. And bottom line, from a public safety standpoint, from a education, housing, the whole thing, economically, we get a new influx of folks who are problematic. Who's in charge of where they're going to be living, what they're doing, where they're going to work? Because we have about a 17% unemployment rate. I think that's still current. Are you getting any insights into that?
Well, let me say this. Your average citizen who is skilled, maybe has experience, is college educated, is unemployed. They're having a hard time getting a job. Right? You take a person that's been committed to state prison, who is already stigmatized, who may have 1 or 2 strikes against them, and they're going to be applying for the same jobs that your law-abiding citizen would be applying for. If you're an employer, who are you going to hire?
So that means they're also going to be applying after that for social services and welfare and in order to survive, and that's not going to be enough. So again, they'll probably go back on the street and try to find it another way.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You know, one other really large expense is the state pays for their medication if they don't have Medi-Cal, psych meds. And now if they don't have Medi-Cal and they go to probation, that's on the county. The state can also arrest parolees and take them back into prison and treat them there. When they're not on parole, they're going to all the county hospitals. So that's another really large expense. And by the way, a UCLA study showed that the parole outpatient clinics did reduce recidivism. So obviously reducing recidivism might not be a priority.
I'm sorry, could you say that last part again, and a little closer to the microphone?
I said the UCLA study showed that the parole outpatient clinics did reduce recidivism. So if they're going to, AB 109 might not be taking that into account when your question about reducing recidivism.
Right. Thank you.
If I may just add, I don't know if you've had an opportunity or not to review Los Angeles County's implementation plan regarding the implementation of Assembly Bill 109. If you haven't, you could probably get it from the District Attorney's Office, the Board of Supervisors, or from the Probation Department. And it looks really good on paper. But I think the issue is that right now, probation does not have the infrastructure. It doesn't have the programs, the mechanisms, the processes in place to address the population that they're getting. I think eventually they will get there and they will have that, but right now I don't think it's there. Let me give you an example. One of our offenders, let's say a parolee, commits a felony or even a technical violation of parole, and he's on the run, he or she's on the run. Within hours, the Department of Corrections, the parole agents, could have a warrant in the system, and if this parolee is found anywhere in the country, anywhere, New York, wherever, we will extradite them back to California on a warrant. Right now, probation, I don't believe, has that mechanism in place. They may have or may be issuing misdemeanor warrants for some of these guys. They also, when a parolee violates their conditions of parole, commits a new crime, we generally place a 3056 PC, what we call a parole hold. And essentially, when we place a parole hold, the parole department, that parolee cannot bail out of jail even if they had $1 million or $2 to post bail. they cannot be released from county jail or state prison until we remove that parole hold. I believe the county is working on that now, on placing holds, but they don't have the authority to place holds on the post-release community supervised PSP persons. But they're working on that. So those are things that I believe probation is working on now, and down the road I'm sure they'll have, but because AB 109 just rolled out October 1, I think those are issues that they have to address and deal with. And probation's not here. They could answer, what's happening with their agency in terms of AB 109.
So with the layoffs that you're facing in parole, it's not exactly like you're going to have the opportunity to go over to county and get picked up because they're not hiring either.
Well, they're hiring. I'm not sure exactly how many. The reports I've seen was that they're going to hire approximately 80 probation officers. And I haven't confirmed, but I think they hired about 40-some of them. I think the problem for the county is that the county is in the same predicament. The county does not know whether they're going to get continued funding or guaranteed funding after 2 years. And as a result, from what I've heard, they are not hiring probation officers on a permanent basis. It's more on a temporary basis, depending on whether funding is obtained down the line. And I think the other issue for probation officers is that they don't receive public safety retirement. And I think that would cost the counties more money as well. The other issue is that there are very few probation officers that are armed. I believe it's less than 50 probation officers are armed, maybe a lot less. Every parole agent in the state of California is mandated to be armed. And so that's another consideration. They're going out and making home calls and arresting people who we normally would supervise or who have prior violent or serious offenses, and they've got to use verbal judo.
It's my understanding that you mentioned probation not being here. It's my understanding that we're going to have some parole representatives early next year.
Yeah, at the January 3rd meeting?
Yes, right. Yeah, possibly then, or at least that's the current plan. We couldn't try to do it all in one sitting, so that's the reason for that.
We couldn't have taken it all in one sitting.
It would have been overload, yeah.
One other question I'd like to ask.
Sure.
I know California has been mandated to release the prisoners. Is California the only state that has ever had this type of action taken? Or have other states also been subject to overcrowding and have been ordered to go through a form of early release?
You know what, I'm not really sure. I can't really say, but I do believe that this is unprecedented in California. This has never happened before.
Okay, any other questions of the Commission?
Excuse me.
Yeah, real quick, I'll just clean up my bad act earlier. The numbers I gave you are projected numbers for this month. Currently, we have 149 in the Antelope Valley. That doesn't include what is transient. Now, I will tell you that, those numbers, when you look at the numbers that we're receiving in the Antelope Valley, they're proportionate to what we've arrested over the last 4 or 5 years. We had a very aggressive campaign to put a lot of people into the state prison system. And we were very, very diligent and active. So when you look at those numbers, and I was a little concerned when I first looked at them, they are proportionate with our activity over the last few years. The other thing I'd like to address real quick, I know you guys are going to get a presentation in January from Lieutenant McQuaid, and he is heading up the County Sheriff's Department effort for the PSPs and the supervision of the parolees in the Antelope Valley. I know for a fact, I've been working with the team that is assigned to the Antelope Valley. It's a sergeant and 6 deputies right now. It's going to be a sergeant and 10 deputies, and they are actively in the Antelope Valley on a daily basis, and they've contacted each and every one of those PSPs that have been released in the Antelope Valley so far. So the sheriff is committed that although this is tough times, and this is going to change the way we do business, he is committed. I sit in meetings with him on a weekly basis. He is committed that we are not going to let this affect the community. We're going to drive hard and make sure that we do our best to make this a safe community.
Lieutenant, are we going to see any increase in manpower with the sheriff's departments in the Antelope Valley because of this situation, or is it?
With that team, yes, you're going to. That's
Okay.
a new team that is being added, and then we've still got the resources that the sheriff promised us, in 2006. We've still got the 3 cops teams. We've still got the GET team, and we've got access to a lot of other teams. It's kind of been my job. I've been bringing all the teams together, and we do major operations and sweeps. So yes, we do bring the resources in, but that cops team that is primarily dedicated to do the county, what I consider the county parole side, is an addition. And yes, the Antelope Valley does get that.
So this kind of changes the way you do business in the Antelope Valley, doesn't it? You're going to have to do things a little differently because of the increase.
Well, I mean, absolutely. We're going to watch it very, very closely, and it's something that we need to keep control of the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank all the representatives of the California Department of Corrections for coming and talking to us today. You can tell the topic is of pretty high concern here. Okay, moving on, last brief discussion of future agenda topics. I thought, given the importance of this topic, that will hopefully limit, if everybody's in agreement, next week, or next month's topic, to the County Probation Department. And I'm a little confused. I know you mentioned somebody from the Sheriff's Department coming. I have an email that Chief James Lopez will be attending.
Yeah, he oversees that entire program. He's the chief of Region 2.
Okay. Will he be speaking to us on this?
I've heard that he will be here also.
I see.
Ken McWade is like the expert. He has developed that whole team under Chief Lopez.
Oh, okay. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, and then Lisa, I received your email today about the thing. Is that individual from the probation department also planning to speak in conjunction with the sheriff's department?
I don't know. I'll verify that and let you know.
Oh, okay, I appreciate it.
Tim, is it possible to get an update on the wellness homes? I know we were supposed to have Conception Harris was supposed to speak with us a few months ago. Could we contact her again?
Concepcion does not handle the wellness homes. That's Michelle from Antelope Valley Partners from Health.
Okay.
So did you want Michelle to come and speak? I don't know, if it sounds like at the next meeting, probation's going to take the bulk of the meeting.
Well, we can put that off until
Until after
February.
that?
Fine.
Yeah, Michelle's very flexible. If I give her a time in advance, she'll just pop in and tell us all about it.
Okay, why don't we plan that for February?
Okay.
Is Tracy still here? Okay, I'll get a hold of her. I think we'll postpone County Housing Authority also. Yeah. Okay, the last item is public business from the floor. We request any person who would like to address the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission on non-agendized matters to complete a speaker card, and you will find speaker cards on the back table of the council chambers. Additionally, we respectfully request that you fill the cards out completely and print as clearly as possible so that, if necessary, the commission or city staff will be able to contact you either by phone or mail. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. When you approach the podium, please notice there are 3 lights. The green light comes on when you begin, the yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red light will come on when your 3 minutes are up. We ask that you be considerate of the allotted time to allow other speakers to have their 3 minutes as well. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the commission meeting, and we appreciate your cooperation. State law prohibits the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff. Do we have any speakers?
David Paul?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good evening. The best part about tonight was seeing the look on some of your faces when we're going over this stuff. I go to a lot of the criminal justice commission meetings, and I've heard a lot of this stuff before. We're in a rock and a hard place. As soon as we pull them in, we push them out the door. It's only part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, we're just treading water, and Commissioner Grooms, that you asked a question before. It's always my question, who is in charge? And as far as the neighborhood revitalization goes, as a resident, as a citizen, I'm seeing more unusual things on my street. I'm more concerned than ever. I spoke at the last criminal justice meeting about the Occupy Wall Street people. That's another thing. These aren't parolees. These are just regular citizens who are fed up. Last week we learned that the Federal Reserve, independent of Congress or the Treasury Department, printed $7.7 trillion during the economic calamity and passed it out to the banks without any authorization from any legal body. And these kinds of things are the things that are just going to drive people crazy. So we have less to work with, we have more problems, we have more anger, we have all these things bubbling over. I think back to the crisis. You know, I've been to several of the meetings where I've spoke about let's all, as a citizen body, prepare, because when the money runs out, when people start getting paid, I know a lot of good people are going to keep working for a while, but that can't go on forever either. So what do we do if it really hits the fan? And the economic calamity is the most pressing thing, and it's gonna catch up with us. So, you know, in New Orleans, people's rights were violated, I feel. People came in and took away citizens' guns. And these are the things that I would like to talk about as a body, a community body, before these things happen, because that's the only thing I have to protect myself with. So what are the plans? Who has the plans? You can make plans. I play a computer strategy game, and Ike comes in talking about plans. He says, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is essential. So by the time you make all these plans, things have changed, and they're useless. What are we going to do when this happens? I want some civic leader, some politician, somebody, and this doesn't pertain to you particularly, to tell me what is the plan when it really goes bad, because it seems to me we're driving right into the ditch, and I don't want to be left without recourse or knowledge of what to do, and I don't want to see us get to that point and say, oh, well, we tried so hard to fix it, we didn't pay attention to the fact that we couldn't, and here we are. So that's always what I do. But thank you for listening, and thank you to everybody here for all you do. We just keep trying.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Good evening. Wow. I'm excited about AB 109. It's a great opportunity to reduce our recidivism rate. This is a unique opportunity. I mentioned this once before, the Criminal Justice Commission. It's rare that we get so many parolees in the Valley all at once. And after going to school for the last 4 years studying criminal justice, I know that studies are so important, like even the Kansas City study that determined that just because you have more police doesn't mean it reduces crime. But having an opportunity to study the parolees that come into our valley, I mean, it's historic. Well, students will be looking it up for decades as a reference to recidivism. Because the issue we have is not every parolee is a bad guy, and nobody wants to go back to prison. And not everyone's violent, and they just need a hand. And as they talked about, we got them. So the only thing we can do is embrace them. If the city was able to create some small study, Lancaster reentry project, where we can watch them for 3 years, point them in the right direction, training. I don't suspect it could be too expensive. I don't know. I think what it would do for them is, first of all, have people, they would know that they're a part of something, that they're a part of the city, you see, and once people are watching and you're a part of something, maybe you're a little less likely to do something wrong. But I don't know. It's up for discussion. But I think what's most important is we have all this potential data, and if we allow 3 or 4 years to pass without tracking them right now, we just wasted thousands of lives and lots of information that we could use for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers? Okay. Okay, are there any commissioner comments? I have a couple. I'd like to close this meeting with an announcement that, unfortunately for us, but very fortunately for her, Brenda Tate has decided to retire. Brenda has been a rock for the Commission these last several years. She has performed the role of being our Commission Secretary in an extremely professional manner, taking minutes of all our meetings. She's also done more behind the scenes than many of you know about, including working on the many revisions to our agendas, posting the public agenda in advance, arranging for equipment requirements at our meetings, providing copies of the agendas, minutes, and reports to the public and to commissioners, and also providing speaker slips for the public use. Brenda, if you get a chance to listen to this, we all wish you the best in retirement, and I appreciate your patience with me through the last several years. She was terrific. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the contributions provided by 2 other City of Lancaster employees, Elizabeth Brubaker and Lee DeRico. Both of these individuals have been with us since the formation of the Commission almost 4 years ago, providing agenda topics, education, information, and even some valuable insights and opinions in many areas. Between these 2, they have attended every Commission meeting, often on their own time. And this exemplifies their commitment to improving the City of Lancaster. Although they will no longer be attending our regular monthly meetings since they have to focus their energies on their primary respective roles in redevelopment and public safety, I would not be surprised to see them at future meetings when issues and topics require their expertise. Elizabeth and Lee, all of us thank you for the tremendous help you have given to each of us. Appreciate it. And with that, I will adjourn today's meeting.